Hello students, we're on to chapter 7, getting into segmenting and targeting the audience after doing market research back on chapter 6. One of the things I want to make sure you do is as you're creating your first draft of survey questions, make sure you look back on chapter 6. I gave you some helpful hints with MailChimp as a sample of a nonprofit survey, but you really need to look back on the project. You need to look and see what are the requirements and take a look at the foundation for Grace Notes so that you can get a better understanding of what your end goals are. Be true to thy brand and thy consumer. Okay, so how do consumers make brand decisions? We all make decisions as consumers. Sometimes we don't realize all the stages we go through before we purchase something, and not all of this is something that we definitely do. But the traditional view of this is that, first of all, we have a need for something. It could be we're hungry, it could be we need a new outfit, we ran out of gas, whatever it is. We start doing an information search like, oh, now I'm looking for a gas station, or I'm going to go on Amazon and check I'm out of suntan lotion, whatever the need may be. I'm looking around now for restaurants because I'm hungry. We evaluate our alternatives. Hey, there's a Chipotle, a Moe's, and a Rocco's Tacos. Which one do I want to go to? And we evaluate those alternatives maybe according to, how hungry we are, how close we are to the restaurant, how much money we have, and then we make a choice. And then the last part of it is that we do a post-purchase evaluation and decide if we'll come back to that restaurant, we'll buy again. And again, this doesn't go with everything. It's just more of a traditional view of how we make decisions on a brand that we purchase. And then we get into the involvement of how much we're into this decision making. And you did have a question in your field exercise, and it has to do with our personal relevance. When we purchase something that involves financial risk, then that's called a high involvement purchase. Okay, so if something's more like a computer, a car, maybe a musical instrument, a house, we're going to be more involved personally in that decision versus something that has no risk and a lower price point. It could be, a soda or a, I don't know, pack of gum, whatever it might be. So you had to fill that information out for your exercise. So I'll be curious to see what you come up with. So this is just a graph here on slide 5 that goes through what low involvement looks like. Same as before that we talked about, the traditional view, but the high involvement has a whole lot more. So when you're highly involved, now we're going to do more of an information search, okay? We're going to evaluate our alternatives and make a decision versus on the other side, we're not doing an information search on low involvement. I'm thirsty, I want a soda, there's a refrigerator at a checkout at Publix, I'm going to pick up a Coke. And the post-evaluation may or may not be, is it refreshing? Would I buy it again? Would I go back to that car dealership? Something like that. So paths to our brand decision depends on the type of product we're buying. So not all responses begin with thinking about a product, or not all responses follow the same route to a decision. So as I mentioned before, in business-to-business marketing, your purchasing is way more high involvement because you're purchasing things like equipment and you have to go through teams of people and departments, and quite frankly, it's not your money. What influences us? Well, consumer behavior is what influences us, and that's a big umbrella, but consumer behavior is how individuals and groups select, purchase, use, and dispose of products, and the needs and the wants that motivate that behavior. And I know there's a good handful of you in the class that have taken my consumer behavior class, kind of like what goes on behind the curtain that makes us want certain things. And there's a lot that goes into this. So the influences include, okay, psychological influences, um, motivations, attitude, personality. Then you move over here to the left to social influences like our social class, our reference groups, our family, our demographics. And then on the right, behavioral influences, the quantity of usage, our brand relationship, innovation. Okay, how much are we into um, being an early adopter versus someone who can wait a few weeks when a new product might come out. But all of those things, psychological, social, and behavioral, believe it or not, all go into the decision making process as a consumer. And like I said, high involvement, low involvement. It doesn't happen all the time. So let's talk about cultural influences. And this was another one of your exercise questions, your field exercise questions. But our culture is made up of tangible items and intangible concepts that define us as a group in the way of our life and as a way of life. And so things like clothing and music and laws and customs and standards of beauty all come from the culture that we're adapted to. Or you may have moved here as a small child and you've adapted our culture versus I grew up here and I didn't have to adapt. It was just, you know, involved in my life from the beginning. But there's norms and values that each culture has, and basically norms are proper behavior. And values are the source of norms which present an underlying belief system. So as an example, in the US, our belief system here is, and value is that we are free and independent. Values govern people's attitudes and guide their behavior. So think about your own culture and what purchases that you made recently that were affected because of where you come from. So cultural influences on slide 11. There are 18 terminal values according to Rokeach's values, and they help us create brand messages that are congruent with cultures. And there's a list of them. It could be happiness or salvation or family security, pleasure, a comfortable life. So these are cultural influences that lead us to purchasing something. The next slide is, I want you to think about in the country where you grew up, certain values have higher or lower values. And depending on your generation, those values are prioritized differently. So on the left here I have, and you can scribble this down on a piece of paper where you're sitting, you rank your highest priority. And I'm gonna show it to you. Back here again. Oh, I can't go back. Nonetheless, you can go back and rank what affects your behavior the most. What's the most important piece to your value system? And it does change according to maybe different events that have happened in your life. Usually events like 9/11 or a natural disaster, things like that are the things that move our value system. More on cultural influences on slide 13. So international or global marketing programs must consider multicultural differences. This is very important, and if it's not really focused on, many people can get offended. I know recently H&M had some sort of issues, as well as some other fashion companies using nooses as a fashion piece. So there's all kinds of things that go on that need to be checked. So national cultural impacts are consumption patterns, and it may be necessary to localize a campaign. So if you're an ad agency, you really want to get into the culture that you're in. Sorry, I was interrupted there. So many ad agencies create campaigns in the local community or region so that they can really connect with the audience rather than using generalized messages. There is another term that we use now called glocalize, and it's a term coined by sociologist Roland Robertson to indicate the integration of local languages, cultures, and customs into global products and brands. So it's good to hit the mass markets because it's less expensive, but what you find out is that you're missing the connection with the particular cultures. So cultural influences, here's some examples. And I do have a YouTube video at the end of this that you need to check out by McDonald's. And McDonald's is very well known for getting into different cultural cuisines and changing up their product. Pretty interesting Canadian versions and of products and other cultures that are pretty cool. So some of the influences, for instance, using certain colors mean something. So blue to Mexicans is a color of mourning, yet for Americans it represents soothing and trustworthiness. In some cultures, personal bonds and informal agreements are far more binding than any formal contract. In others, the presence of a legal document is paramount, really more Americans. Lastly, while punctuality may be expected in one culture, in other cultures a meeting time might be considered more of a suggestion. Not for my classes. The suggestion is that you arrive on time, but I understand that there's some cultures are laid back and you have to understand that. And this is what we're talking about when we talk about cultural influences and how it affects the messaging and the connection to the customer. More on social influences. Social class is really important when in our society, and it may be determined by our income, our wealth, our education, occupational prestige, family prestige, value of home or neighborhood. Okay, so we're going to break that down in a little bit, but certainly this affects our behavior, our purchasing habits, where we come from. I know a lot of times the working class and lower middle class try to buy products that are higher end to keep up with the Joneses, as they say. There's occupational prestige when we talk about doctors, lawyers. Family prestige is basically money that's coming from old money from many years ago, like maybe the Flagglers here in Florida. The value of your home, your zip code, things like that. Reference groups also affect our behavior. So reference groups are people that influence us. So we think about maybe your parent or your child influences your purchases, or a friend or a coach, a teacher, maybe a hobby that you're a part of, a fellow worker, political party. So there's lots of things here that influence us. We call them reference groups. There's also brand communities we might be a part of. So in this case, I give the example of Harley Davidson. I do this a lot during my marketing classes because Harley Davidson is very well known of having a tight-knit group, from what they wear to what they ride and what they stand for. And this is a great example of a reference group. And they offer guidance to one another and a connection. Another example is if you're related to a university. So many of you are getting ready to graduate from FAU, and you will be part of a brand community, whether you're coming back for the football games or wearing FAU swag or have a magnet on the back of your car. That's considered a brand community, believe it or not. So family as a social influence. So family is people related by blood, marriage, or adoption who live in the same household. And a household these days is not typical of the Norman Rockwell picture of a family. A household consists of those who are in a dwelling, whether you're related or not. And in the 21st century, one-person households are now outnumbering married couples with kids, which is a pretty interesting statistic. So it's the first time in U.S. history that one-person households have outnumbered households with married couples. So think about, what does that mean for marketers? Always think in terms of what does this mean for an opportunity for marketers when you, since this is your major. You will be someone who is creative in the way that you think. In terms of a one-person household, why should you be penalized to buy two of something? Why not, more single-size meals, which they do now at the grocery store? Personalized meals, personalized items, and not a higher priced item because you're just one. So there's lots of opportunities. So think about that. Take that outside of the classroom, if you will, and see how that applies. Psychological influences are still back to our basic survival needs here. What do we want and what do we desire and what do we need? So there's a gap between a desired state of being, I want to be 15 pounds lighter, and my actual state of being. So the greater the gap, the greater the motivation to close it. So if I want to lose 25 pounds instead of 15, now how is this influencing my purchases? I'm purchasing healthier products, maybe workout clothes, a gym membership. So marketing communication highlights those gaps in our lives and emphasizes what the ideal state would be, to be 15 pounds lighter, to look a certain way, to be wearing certain makeup and to look beautiful. And so think about how marketers influence us psychologically. And of course, where would we be without the Maslow's hierarchy of needs? Anyone in my consumer behavior class definitely knows about this. But basically, it starts out at the bottom and goes up in the pyramid. And the further you go up, they give examples here of companies that kind of tap into certain influences and needs that we have. But I want you to think in terms of what your project is. Okay, it's a non-profit in the South Florida area helping children with musical lessons, instruments, its exposure, etc. So who in this group, in this pyramid, would be a group that you'd be going after? Think about ego and self-actualization. It's about getting to a level in your life where you want to give back. It's self-fulfillment. You want enriching experiences where it's not all about you and survival, but it's about helping others. So think about that top tier as you are creating your messaging and thinking about your survey questions. So what motivates us? A motive is an internal force that stimulates us to behave in a certain way to reach a goal. Okay, this is a driving force that produced by tension caused by an unfulfilled want or need. So what motivates you to do well in my class, to get a good grade, to keep your GPA up, to be able to graduate on time, to possibly get into grad school or get to a good job? That's your motivation. People strive to reduce this tension, and at any given point you're probably affected by a number of different motives in your life as you make decisions. So here's a great example of a motivational message by Gatorade. It's called Forget Me. Take a look at this. I think when we watch some of these videos like from Nike or Gatorade, it's the athlete speaking to motivate us to get to a level where they are, how they got there. And they do shine a light on the, not just the top athletes, but those striving to be a top athlete or a good athlete. So take a look at this. This is a great example of inspirational video that is very much tapping into the psychology of our behavior. So more on motivation. As we said, a motive is an internal force that stimulates our behavior. And there is a satisfaction is the gap between our expectation of a product or experience and our actual experience with it. So sometimes we're unsatisfied and That's kind of like motivates whether or not we'll come back. And then there's what we call dissonance. Cognitive dissonance is that refers to a conflict between our thoughts. So after we purchase something, usually a high involvement purchase, it creates tension. Did we do the right thing? Am I satisfied? Are there other options out there? So as marketers, what can we do to help the consumer not have that cognitive dissonance? So I asked that question on the bottom of the slide, and I want you to think for a second, what can you do as a marketer? So some of the things you can do is offer a warranty, a money back guarantee. You can return it in 30 days if you're not satisfied. So a lot of companies do that to make us feel like, okay, I'm not making that much of taking a big risk here. If I don't like it, I can always return it in 30 days. So that's like a psychological influence for us when we're on the fence as to whether or not we're happy with the product or should even spend the money on it. Usually, again, high level, high involvement products that are expensive. So here's an example of airborne pills. This is for traveling to keep yourself from getting a cold. So what motivates travelers? Airborne nose. This is obvious for purchasing this product when you travel. So this is what they do. They motivate you by saying you don't want to get sick when you're traveling. Take this pill and you'll, all the ills will go away. So now let's switch gears a little bit to business and decision making. So some of you are already working for companies right now as full-time positions, and you know that when you go to purchase something at a business level, it's very different than you as a consumer. First of all, you have a lot of people involved in the decision making, sometimes a committee. There is rational and quantitative criteria that dominates. So in other words, do we really need this product? How much is it going to cost? It's usually based on specs from a bid on a contract, depending on the size of the product. Usually there's some sort of relationship between the company that you're purchasing the equipment from. And quality is key. If you're happy with it, they know that you'll repeat the purchase at a high level with business to business. And the personal selling is important at this level because if you have a salesperson, you can reach out to them if you have any issues with the product before, during, and after receiving the piece of equipment or whatever it is that you're purchasing at a business level. So how do we segment markets and target audiences? Okay, all of you have been given your target audience, so that's a good thing. But there's so much information out there that we're going to talk about during this chapter to designate who you're researching, whether it's baby boomers, Gen Z, Gen X, millennials. So segmenting just helps us divide people up as a market group so that we can really message to them better. Ways to segment a market. First of all, is it a business or a consumer? Okay. In your case, you might be going after businesses for sponsorships for your Grace Notes, but you may also be going after consumers as well. So refer to the markets either as those who shop for or purchase the product. Okay, so it might be donors, those who actually use the product, and those who help the buyer make a brand choice. Okay, so this is a little different from a nonprofit. So I really want you to start looking into more information about nonprofits so you can help segment your market and understand how other successful nonprofits do this. So market segmentation is just enables a company to match the needs and the wants of its products. It's used because there are few homogeneous markets anymore, okay? We have things called niche or niche marketing. So instead of marketing to the masses, we're marketing to specific segments. And individuals in a niche market are defined by distinctive interests or attitudes. Okay, so it could be health and wellness. It could be athletic. It could be something more focused on food, like gluten-free, which is what I am. And that is not by choice. It is something that's an allergy. So that in and of itself is a niche market. Vegan, vegetarian, pescatarian. So if we're getting into the food segmentation versus other areas in the business, in this marketplace. Types of segmentation, you can get into demographics, life stage, or geographic. So think demographically, we divide things up by age, gender, ethnicity, and income. So these are the kinds of questions you're probably going to be asking in your survey. And give them choices. So ages, 18 to 24, 25 to 36, break it down and let people quickly check off. Is it important to know if they're a male or a female? May or may not matter. Ethnicity, again, only if you're messaging a certain way do you need to know someone's ethnic background. Income level, again, give people choices so that you know if they're in a position to donate or become a sponsor. Life stage is based on the consumer's life cycle. Where are they in their life? Are they in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and above? And geographically, using location as a defining variable. And in this case, a lot of the decisions that have already been made for you for this project, you already know you're in South Florida. The chances of someone donating outside of South Florida are probably pretty low. I've given you your life stage segmentation as far as what you're going to be focusing on. And the demographic part is what you need to break down in your survey. Then we go into 3 other areas: psychographic, behavioral, and values and benefits. Psychographic segmentation is based on how people spend their money, their interests or opinions. We find that people that are interested in higher level things like museums, they own boats, they have leisure time, golf, they travel. Those people tend to have a higher end lifestyle. That's a psychographic segmentation. Behaviorally, this is based on product category and brand usage. How often do they use the product? Do they use it every day? Is it once a month? Do they use it yearly? And this leads up to brand loyalty. And then values and benefits based on underlying values or consumer needs and problems. So if they have a certain need or have an issue, maybe health reasons are a reason why we segment people in that category. And then we break this down here, and you can use this again for your survey, different approaches. By demographics, you look everything from gender down to household size. By stage of life, can be age, your living situation, your discretionary income. By geographically, it could be international, national, state, city. It could be a climate. It could be whether you're living in the country or the city. By psychographics, we can put it under lifestyle, your social class, your personality type. Are you high energy? Are you low energy? Are you adventurous? Are you a bookworm? These kinds of things. Behavioral characteristics, again, how often do you use it? And are you a brand loyal person? And then benefits sought, specific problems solved by the product. It could be, I use Head and Shoulders and now my scalp isn't dry, or I use Weight Watchers products and now I'm healthier and I've lost weight. So targeting your best audience is done by matching your audience's needs and wants and positioning the product in the most relevant way to match their interests. In other words, you need to be in front of your audience. So you need to know about your audience. Where's your audience? Demographically, psychographically, behaviorally, and sociographic. Who are they? Where do they shop? What do they do? How can you get in front of them to get them to be involved in Grace Notes? Okay, so you're really getting involved with this audience. What do they like? Where do they go? How do they consume? These are all important. Okay, targeting the best audience. First, use segmentation characteristics. Okay, Add additional descriptive variables to that. Who's the ideal consumer group? And I really want you to think about this as you're working in your groups. What does he or she look like? I do this in my regular advertising class. When I say regular, I mean face-to-face, where we actually take magazines and we make a board of what our ideal consumer looks like, our target audience. Is she athletic? Is she a mom? Are they a couple? Do they have a boat? Are they active? Are they religious? What do they like to wear? Are they healthy in what they eat? So we make this whole vision board, and it really helps the students connect with who that person is that they're targeting and messaging and making them real. So each time you add a variable, you narrow your market and come closer and closer to that ideal market. And it looks like an example here. More and more descriptors will define who that person is. You don't want to be so defined, but at the same time, you don't want to be, hanging out there. You want an actual target. But your target can have a lot of pieces to it. Let's put it that way. So profiling markets and target audiences. Okay. Demographics, as we said before, refer to statistical, social, economic, and characteristics such as age, gender, education, race, geography, and religion. So we're going to get a little more focused. So each of you has been given one of these age-related population categories. So I've taken that out of it for you completely. Okay? You don't even have to think now. Now you need to focus on if it's Generation X. You need to find out about Generation X. What are they doing? Where do they shop? How old are they? What are their likes? What do they listen to? Find out about your target audience. And that way you can apply your messaging and focus on getting them to connect with Grace Notes. Here's an example of Nerf. And what they do is, nothing is by accident, okay? This Nerf product is typically for boys. They show a boy on the front of this that's about the age 8 to 12. So that when you're going to purchase this, you're thinking, oh, my son's about this age. Look, this matches up to something that he would like. I think she would like it too, but they're obviously promoting it to a certain gender. So back to demographics regarding gender and sexual orientation. So women account for 85% of consumer purchases. Bingo, important thing to know, people, right? So if I'm appealing mostly to women, maybe there's a different approach I'm using, okay? Many brands are either masculine or feminine in terms of use. I think we all know that. Walk into a store. Blues and pinks. Not that I agree with it, but that's how people know. Is this for a guy or a girl? So LGBTQ households have become more visible in the economy, more advertising for sure. And surveys find that some same-sex couples are more likely to be college educated, earn more than opposite-sex couples. So think about that. Don't skip over this market. They have disposable income. They are smart and educated, and they want to purchase. You just need to tap into that marketplace. It might not apply to Grace Notes, or it might apply to Grace Notes. All I'm saying is it's important to know as a marketer. Education, occupation, and income equals more money, which is why you're getting your degree. Education dictates the way promotional messages are written, okay? Messages, levels of difficulty. So obviously, if you're going after a higher end market, you might tweak it and use different kinds of wording, different settings. You may put it in a higher end magazine, a higher end media. Occupation is key because most people identify themselves by what they do, okay? Not that that's right or wrong, it's just what people do. I'm a doctor, I'm a lawyer, I'm a housewife, I'm a teacher, I'm a nurse, whatever. Advertisers are especially interested in consumers that have extra money, okay? It's called discretionary income. Where are you going to spend that money? Spend it with us. So let's get into the other parts of demographics. Race, ethnicity, and immigration. First of all, we know that we have a very much of a melting pot here in the United States, but it's very important to recognize the trends that are coming our way as marketers. Different media needs to be used for different ethnic groups. Many companies have jumped on the bandwagon, from Home Depot to Walmart, but it's also important to know, as we'll talk more about this, kind of like blunders that have happened out there. But Latinos, for instance, are not a homogeneous group. They're made up of Mexicans, Central and South Americans, Cubans, Spanish, all of that, okay? So growing areas to consider: Latinos, African American, and Asian. These are areas that are growing. As marketers, we need to be aware of this. As we message, we need to include all groups in our messaging. Here's an example that Tide uses for a Hispanic culture. La salsa se baila, no se viste. Geography. Okay. Marketers use this strategy because retailers are often tied to locations where the products are sold. So media planners are also use the term designated market areas because certain products sell better in certain areas. Clearly down south, things like sweet tea, bathing suits, sunscreen, outdoor products like for the beach, picnicking, the pool, are going to sell well all year round here versus the Northeast, who can continue to have snow up until, I swear, April. So things that need to be considered: the climate, whether it's urban or suburban, what region, how does this affect the messaging? It absolutely does. Someone from the Midwest versus the Northeast versus the Southwest, Pacific Coast, all these people, yes, we're all from the same country, but we all have distinct ways of receiving messages. We all have our own slang, we all have our own accents, we all have our own things that we like that influence us, especially when it comes to eating. Places are known more for different styles of food from different parts of our country. Religion plays a big part. It's a key factor in identifying who are and are not in the market for certain goods and services. For instance, some products are banned in different religions: alcohol, tobacco, meat, pork, caffeine. Certain clothing is or is not worn. Okay, and Christianity will remain the largest religious group in the world. Islam is growing faster than any other major religion. Again, as marketers, we don't ignore these things, we embrace them. So psychographics refer to psychology, okay, and lifestyle. The combination of the two leads to things like: what activities do you partake in? What is your value system? What are your interests and hobbies? What are your attitudes about certain things and your opinions? Okay, and that in the middle of all that is lifestyle. Okay, so you take the person, the product, and the setting, and what's in the middle but lifestyle. The psychographics are very important when you're considering how to message someone. So attitude is really a predisposition that we have. It could be emotional, our opinion about something, our mental state. Trending attitudes, for instance, are more health and sustainability and green marketing, ethical consumerism, shop local. A lot goes on with how marketers are changing things up with millennials. You've heard this a million times, that they're a little more focused on things such as sustainability, using a story to tell about the product, authenticity, credibility, all these things, giving back in a charitable way. Again, getting back to psychographics, here's an example of lifestyles: patterns of consumption, personal relationships, interests, leisure activities. And there's lots of different concepts out there in the textbook that we use to kind of segment people. And this particular one for lifestyle is called the Monitor Mind Base. And what they do is they break people down into specific groups about their attitudes. So, am I a rock steady person? And am I a down to earth person? Am I driven? Am I sophisticated? So these are all like groups that they put people in so that they could message to them and a little better. A little more on this is called the VALS, VALS. This system categorizes consumers according to their certain traits. So for instance, am I someone who's motivated by ideals as a thinker and a believer? Am I motivated by achievement, an achiever who strives? Am I motivated by self-expression? So I'm more of an experience and a maker, a DIY kind of person. So how important is that to understand where your audience is coming from and what they like when you go to message to them? Socio-demographic segments. This approach refers to people in terms of when and where they were born. Terms used to describe demographic and lifestyle segments. Again, more breaking people down so that we can market to them in a better way. Okay, and these are all marketing terms, by the way. They're kind of funny. So I like the mini-me's on the bottom. These are infants and toddlers of affluent parents and grandparents. So we've all seen them, especially around Boca. They dress their child like them. Okay. Yes, they're wearing Uggs at 3. Skippies are school kids with purchasing power. Okay. Yeah, wondering why they're walking around with the latest and greatest earphones and, backpacks. Then you get into dinkies, double income young couples with no kids. Again, why not put these people in categories so that we can focus on them? Guppies, gay, upwardly mobile professionals. Okay, we're almost done our slides here. Here's yet another life stage group for infographics. What they do is, it's called PRISM, and it's really classifying people according to the zip code they live in. So when you think about the zip code you live in, you may remember going to a store, and when you go to pay for something, they ask you for your zip code. Well, the reason they do that is so that they realize how many people they are messaging from a particular area. So if I continue to get zip code 33449 where I live in Wellington, but my store is in Royal Palm, just say, I'm going to want to heavy up on my messaging to that area because it seems that I'm bringing in a lot of people and want to continue to keep up that loyal customer into my store or whatever the case may be. Trends and fads. Okay. How important is it for companies to be on top of what's trending and what's fads are about? And that could be the latest flavor, the latest ingredient, the way to promote something on a menu. I think in terms of food again. So when we think of like elixir drinks, these are basically water infused with cucumber and lavender and lemon, yet they're selling these drinks for $7 a piece. Okay, so that is a fad that's happening. Okay, I don't understand because I'll just get a lemon water, but it's important to know about trends because as consumers, we're always looking for something interesting. I was just out at First Watch and they had $1 Million bacon. Basically 4 strips of bacon dipped in some delicious sweet sauce and like cooked and crisped up. And they're charging, $8 for 4 of them. So again, people like new and different things. And these people are called cool hunters, and they specialize in identifying trends and fads and that appeal to young people, and they bring them to their companies, and they're observing what's going on in the marketplace with young and old people. So think about a trend that you've seen and understand how important that is to marketers. It could be a variety of different things, from products that are trending to certain activities. So targeting and profiling using behavioral patterns, okay? So 2 ways to classify usage, okay? Usage rate is either light, medium, or heavy. That means if I'm a heavy user of a product, I'm just gonna use, it's not a good thing, cigarettes, for instance. I buy a pack a day, then I'm a heavy user versus, oh, I'm out at a bar and I ask someone for a cigarette, okay? Or I buy a pack once a month. So brand relationship is another way. How are you connected with the brand? Are you a first-time user? Are you a loyal customer? So heavy users are the ones that marketers want to focus on, okay? They use the product the most, and we want to keep that customer, okay? But there's also people who want to switch, and this is where there's an opportunity as well. So switchers have low levels of brand loyalty, and they may be willing to try your brand, so there is an opportunity there. That's where things like couponing and sampling and awareness come into play. So innovation and adoption is really, we're getting down to our last slides here. So how willing are people to try something new? So this is called diffusion of innovation curve, and it identifies the adoption process of new ideas. Some people are ready to jump on the bandwagon right away for the newest and best products, whether they be an Apple Watch or a particular car or whatever it might be. And then you have laggards at the very end, which are the people that kind of wait it out. Maybe the price comes down. Let's see if other people like it. But there's a perceived risk that's attached to this of trying something new. And think about it now. What category do you fit in? I definitely am someone who's in the middle. And it depends on what it is that I'm ready to jump in on. So seeking seekers, okay. Segmenting and targeting has evolved in recent years with social media, as you know, and word of mouth is very important, and listening to the customer is very important. And we need to understand that our audience wants to interact with our brands. So companies do this by using what they call seekers or influencers for their brands. And you're very aware of influencers. I'm just putting, again, concepts around things that you already know as a consumer, because you follow influencers. Many of you do. And what they do is these people are, they seek pleasure and positive experiences, and they tell people about it. They challenge the brand, and they help companies create better and more effective brand communication. So companies are definitely looking for influencers, those people who are going to connect with a lot of different people. And you may have an influencer in your life that's someone on social media versus maybe just like a roommate or a parent or a friend that influences you, because there's someone who puts themselves out there. They get involved, they're not afraid to take risks, and they kind of expose themselves to a lot of different things. So that way they're able to give a really good opinion about something. They have a relationship with the brand. Okay, so that is it for chapter 7. Our next chapter 8, let's see where we are with chapter 8. We are up to strategic planning. So that's getting more and more into our project. So please let me know if you have any questions. These last 2 chapters, 6 and 7, should certainly help you in your survey questions.